It was supposed to be a peaceful hike, just a solitary retreat into the mountains. Nathan had always loved the outdoors, the serenity of nature, the quiet that came with being alone. After a grueling week at work, he sought refuge in the untouched wilderness, hoping the sounds of the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the distant calls of birds would soothe his mind. He'd been hiking for hours, the steep incline of the path taking him higher and higher into the jagged peaks. The air grew thinner, and the world below seemed to vanish into a blur of greens and browns. His footsteps crunched softly against the forest floor, the sound muffled by the thick canopy of trees that sheltered him. The sun hung low, casting long golden shadows over the landscape, but the deep mountain forest remained cool and dim. Nathan paused to catch his breath, standing on the edge of a small cliff that overlooked a valley below. The view was breathtaking, a stretch of rolling hills, endless trees, and the winding river far below, its silver ribbon winding through the forest. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the place wash over him. He felt at ease here, alone with nothing but his thoughts. After a few moments of calm, he began to turn back, deciding it was time to head down before the sun disappeared behind the mountains. As he stepped away from the cliff and continued along the trail, his thoughts wandered to the world he had left behind. Work, responsibilities, the clutter of modern life. It all seemed so distant now. He felt lighter, unburdened, as though he could leave everything behind and just live in this moment forever. Then it happened. His name, faint but unmistakable, echoed through the mountains. Nathan. The sound stopped him dead in his tracks. He turned toward the direction of the voice, his breath caught in his throat. It was impossible. There was no one else around, no other hikers, no animals nearby that could make such a sound. The voice wasn't exactly loud, but it was clear enough to send a shiver down his spine. It was his own voice. He stood there for a few moments, trying to make sense of it, but the echo was gone as quickly as it came. The mountain air was still, the only sound now the whispering breeze and the distant call of a bird. Nathan shook his head, trying to brush it off. Maybe he was just imagining things, the fatigue of the hike playing tricks on him. He took a few more steps down the trail, the odd sensation of hearing his own voice lingering in his mind. But then the echo came again. Nathan! He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned around, scanning the area once more. No one. There was no one there, no sign of movement, no animal tracks. The trees around him were still. But the voice, it came again, as if the mountain itself had whispered his name. Nathan tried to laugh it off, but it felt wrong. There was something unsettling about hearing his own name in the empty wilderness. A cold chill ran down his spine, and he felt a sudden unease gnawing at him. Something wasn't right. He quickened his pace, eager to put distance between himself and the strange occurrence. But the echo came once more, this time carrying something else with it. A question. Are you alone? The words hung in the air for a long moment, and Nathan's breath caught in his throat. He paused, unable to move. His first instinct was to call out, to respond, but he knew that would be foolish. There was no one here to ask him anything, no one around to speak with him, and yet the voice continued. Are you alone? He stood frozen, his mind racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. The voice wasn't just repeating his name now, it was asking him a question he hadn't asked. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat louder than the last. His thoughts raced. Was someone playing a prank on him? Was he dreaming? But the cold mountain air, the craggy rocks beneath his boots, the silence surrounding him, it was all too real. The voice came again. Are you afraid? Nathan couldn't breathe. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, a primal sense of dread flooding through him. What was this? How was this possible? There was no one around. The voice was just an echo, just the wind playing tricks, wasn't it? And then, without warning, the echo answered again, the voice mocking him in its repetition. Are you afraid? Are you afraid? Are you afraid? It wasn't his voice this time. It wasn't even human. It was something deeper, something older, a guttural whisper that crawled beneath his skin, sending tremors through his body. He staggered back, his eyes wide with fear. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. He couldn't move, couldn't break the spell that had gripped him. Then the voice shifted, its tone darkening, taking on a new eerie resonance. I see you. Nathan's blood ran cold. The words echoed in his mind, each repetition sinking deeper into his consciousness. They weren't just words. They were a warning, a promise, a threat. The mountains, the trees, the wind, they all seemed to close in on him. The sense of being watched, of being followed, was overwhelming. He was no longer alone. The forest, once so peaceful and tranquil, now seemed like a maze of shadows and whispers. The quiet had turned oppressive, heavy with the presence of something unseen. Nathan's breathing became shallow, his pulse racing. He turned in every direction, searching for anything, anyone. But there was nothing, nothing except the trees, the rocks, and the path leading further into the wilderness. He was alone, but the voice knew everything. Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in the mountains with him was not just an echo. It was something else, something that had been here long before him. The ancient spirit of the land, a forgotten presence that lurked in the shadows, waiting for someone to wander too far, to stray off the path. His hands trembled as he reached for his phone, trying to bring up the map. But the screen remained black, the battery dead despite the full charge he'd started with. Desperation clawed at him. He could feel the eyes upon him, unseen but ever present. The voice, once mocking, now seemed to take on a sense of curiosity, of hunger. It was aware of him, aware of his every movement, his every breath. The world around him seemed to close in, the air growing colder, heavier. He turned, but there was nothing there. The same trees, the same rocks, the same winding path. But the feeling of being watched, of being hunted, was unbearable. It was inescapable. And then, just as the first hint of panic began to take over, the voice came again, clearer now, as if it were standing just behind him. I see you. Nathan whirled around, but there was no one there. The silence was deafening, but the presence was still there, watching him, waiting for him to make a move, to do something, anything, so it could finally reveal itself. He stumbled backward, his feet tangling in the underbrush. His mind screamed for him to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. He was frozen, trapped in this moment, in this place, with something unseen, something terrible. The voice spoke again, this time closer, almost in his ear. I see you. And that was the last thing Nathan ever heard. Nathan's heartbeat thundered in his chest as the silence swallowed him whole. The voice that had spoken his name, asked him questions, and whispered in his ear had all but paralyzed him. Every nerve in his body screamed at him to move, to run, but his legs were frozen in place, his body betraying him as the air around him thickened with an unnatural stillness. His eyes darted in every direction, searching for the source of the voice, but there was nothing. Just the ancient trees, the dense underbrush, and the fading light of the sun that cast long, eerie shadows across the forest floor. The path ahead seemed endless, winding into the heart of the mountains. There was no escape. The voice came again, colder now, as if it were coming from the very depths of the earth. "I see you." The words were an invitation, an admission. Nathan could feel his body tremble, his pulse racing faster as dread coursed through him. It was no longer just a voice echoing through the mountains. It felt like something tangible, something that could reach out and touch him at any moment. The presence was all-encompassing, surrounding him, pressing in from every side, suffocating him. He swallowed hard, his throat dry, trying to make sense of what was happening. Could it be real? Was this just some hallucination? Was he losing his mind? But no matter how many times he questioned it, the feeling never wavered. The feeling that something or someone was out there, just beyond the veil of trees, waiting, watching. Desperately, Nathan turned and started to move, his feet dragging through the undergrowth as he stumbled forward. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do, where to go. He couldn't stay here, but every step he took seemed to echo the same haunting words over and over again in his mind. "I see you." What did it mean? Was he supposed to respond? Was there something more to this? He could almost feel the words pressing down on him, pushing him deeper into the forest. He needed to escape, to outrun the voice, but how could he outrun something that was already inside his head? How could he escape a presence that knew him, that knew every thought before he even formed it? As he continued to move, the voice didn't stop. It followed him, lacing every step he took with an eerie chill. His breath quickened, each inhale more shallow than the last. There was no wind now, no bird song, no rustling of leaves. It was as though the entire forest had gone silent in reverence for whatever was observing him. He reached a clearing, the moonlight filtering through the trees and casting silver shadows across the ground. Nathan's eyes scanned the area frantically, searching for any sign of movement, but there was nothing. And yet, the voice came again. "Are you lost?" Nathan froze in place, his heart hammering in his chest. How could it know? He hadn't said a word aloud, hadn't even dared to think about the possibility of being lost. The voice was in his head, weaving its way into his thoughts, pulling out the most intimate, vulnerable parts of him. It wasn't just speaking to him, it was speaking through him, pulling at the very fabric of his sanity. Without thinking, Nathan shouted into the night, his voice trembling with panic, "Who are you? What do you want?" The silence that followed was suffocating. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of his own ragged breathing, the rustling of leaves beneath his feet, and the distant howl of a wolf in the far-off hills. His voice, though desperate and wild, seemed to have no effect. And then the voice returned, as soft and chilling as a breeze on a winter night. "I want you." The words cut through him like a knife. His stomach churned, his knees buckling beneath him. As he stumbled backward, he reached out, grasping for anything to steady himself. But the forest was a blur of shadows and twisted shapes. His legs refused to cooperate, and he fell to the ground with a dull thud, his breath ragged and uneven. The voice was everywhere now, filling his ears, his mind, his very being. It wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was a presence, an overwhelming force that seemed to grow stronger with every passing second. I see you. I know you. I am you. The words reverberated in his skull, gnawing at his sanity. What was it saying? I am you. The voice wasn't just speaking to him, it was speaking through him, drawing on something deep within him, some primal fear that he had long buried. He tried to stand, to move, but it felt as though the forest itself had wrapped around him, its dark arms holding him in place. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their gnarled branches twisting like fingers reaching for him. He could feel the ground beneath him tremble, the very earth alive with some dark energy that was pulling him deeper into the mountain's embrace. Do you remember? The voice asked, its tone lilting, almost playful. Do you remember the stories? The ones you heard as a child? The ones you told yourself were nothing but old myths? Nathan's mind raced. Stories? Myths? What was it talking about? He had heard tales of haunted places, of spirits that roamed the earth, but they were just stories, nothing more than children's tales to frighten the weak. He had never believed in any of it, but as the voice continued, the memories began to resurface, memories he had long forgotten, memories he had buried deep within the recesses of his mind. The old stories his grandmother used to tell him, stories of things that lived in the mountains, of creatures that could mimic voices, that could become voices. He had dismissed them as nonsense when he was young, but now, standing alone in the dark, in the heart of the mountains, he realized with sickening clarity that the stories weren't just stories. They were warnings. The voice seemed to relish in his realization. Do you remember the one about the echo? The one who calls to the lost? The one who watches from the shadows? Nathan's breath caught in his throat. The stories, the warnings, all of it came flooding back. The echo, the thing that waited for the lonely, the isolated, to wander too deep into the mountains, to stray off the beaten path and become lost. It was never just an echo. The realization was like a cold hand closing around his heart. The thing that had been calling to him, the thing that had been watching him, was not an echo at all. It was something ancient, something that thrived in the shadows, in the forgotten places of the world. I see you, it whispered again, the words now dripping with malicious glee, and I always will. Nathan's eyes darted around in a frenzy, his heart racing with the desperate need to escape. But there was no escape. The voice was in his mind, in the very air around him, and the darkness was closing in. It had always been here, always watching, waiting for him to come. He was already a part of it now. The darkness seemed to close in tighter with each passing moment, as if the very trees around him were leaning in to listen. Nathan's pulse raced, his breath shallow and ragged. Every sound, every rustle of the leaves, every flicker of shadow felt as though it carried a threat. His mind was spinning, his thoughts jumbled, but one thing was clear. There was no way out, no escape. The voice, once distant and playful, had become a constant presence, a malignant force that seemed to encircle him, pushing closer and closer, until it felt as though the very air he breathed was thick with its presence. I see you, It whispered again, now almost a hiss, slithering through his ears like a snake. The words wrapped around his mind like an invisible cord, pulling him in, forcing him to listen, forcing him to understand. His thoughts became a whirlpool of fear, memories, and fleeting images. He remembered the stories, the myths that had once seemed so far-fetched, so irrelevant to his life. But now they felt real. Too real. The legends of the echo that haunted the mountain, that preyed on the lost, on the alone. He was one of them now, one of the lost. Suddenly, there was a shift in the air. The presence that had once been just a shadow on the edge of his perception now felt tangible, as though it was right there, inches from his face. He could almost feel it breathing, feel the pulse of something ancient, something older than the trees, older than the mountains themselves. The ground beneath him trembled again, not as an aftershock, but as a call, a beckoning. The earth seemed to vibrate with an urgency, as if the land itself had come alive to claim him. He tried to scream, to call out for help, but the sound of his voice was swallowed up, lost in the thick, oppressive silence. No one would hear him. No one could help him. He had come too far, gone too deep, and now he was bound to the mountain, bound to the echo. "I am you," the voice murmured, as if it were a secret, a dark truth that only Nathan could understand now. He could feel it. It had always been here. He had wandered too far, strayed too deep into the wilderness, and now he was a part of the mountain, a part of the story, a part of the darkness. He had become one with it. The trees began to shift, their branches creaking as if alive. Shadows stretched and twisted in unnatural ways, writhing in the moonlight as though they were creatures themselves, waiting for their time to strike. The air became thick with an acrid scent, like wet earth and decay. Nathan could taste it on his tongue, could feel it in the pit of his stomach. And then the ground beneath his feet cracked open. The earth split with a thunderous roar, a deep, guttural sound that echoed through the mountains, reverberating against the bones of the world itself. Nathan stumbled backward, his heart pounding in his chest as the ground shifted, breaking apart, as though the land was splitting open to swallow him whole. The darkness surged forward, and with it, the voice, now louder than ever. It was everywhere, in every crack, in every crevice, in the very air he breathed. It consumed him. It consumed everything. "I see you," it breathed, and in that moment, Nathan understood. He had always been a part of it, always been a part of the land, of the mountain, of the echo. The voice was not just an echo of his own mind. It was a manifestation of something older, something bound to the very heart of the mountains themselves. It was a creature of the earth, of the shadows, a thing that fed on those who dared to venture too far, too deep. It was a guardian, a watcher, and a predator. Nathan had thought he was hiking alone. He had thought he was just a man seeking solitude, seeking peace. But he had walked into the heart of the mountain story, the heart of its dark legend. And now he was a part of that story, a part of the echo, never to leave. The ground opened wider, and the shadows stretched further, crawling over him, swallowing him whole. He felt the air grow colder, the temperature dropping, as though the very life was being drained from the world around him. He gasped, his breath turning to mist in the frigid air, his body growing numb as the darkness closed in. But then, as the darkness seemed to consume him, something else began to shift. A new voice, faint, distant, almost familiar, whispered in his ear, though he could no longer move to escape. "You're not alone." The words echoed in his mind, cutting through the fear like a blade. He struggled to comprehend what he was hearing, but the voice was there, and it was calling to him, pulling him from the depths of the darkness. In that brief moment, as if summoned by the voice, the shadows parted just enough for him to see it. A figure, tall and gaunt, standing at the edge of the clearing, bathed in the faint light of the moon. It was a woman, but not a woman as he had ever seen before. Her skin was pale as marble, her eyes black and endless, like the void itself. Her hair seemed to flow with a life of its own, moving like a windless breeze. Nathan's heart stopped, his breath caught in his throat. The woman's presence radiated power, ancient power, something that could not be explained by the laws of nature, something that transcended the world of the living. She was as much a part of the mountain as the trees, as the stones, as the echo itself. She was one with it, and she was now reaching out to him. "You're not alone," she repeated, her voice like the whisper of 1,000 winds carrying the weight of centuries. "It's not the echo that watches you, Nathan. It's me." Suddenly he understood. This was not the land itself, nor the echo that had haunted him. This was something older, something far darker. The echo was but a servant, a creature born from the earth to protect, to watch. But the woman, the figure before him, was the true force behind it all. And now she was offering him a choice. With a flick of her wrist, the darkness pulled back, just enough for Nathan to see the distant horizon, the path that led back down the mountain, back to the world he had once known. The weight of her presence still pressed upon him, but there was a sliver of light, a hint of escape. "Choose," she said, her voice a low, melodic whisper. "Stay and become part of the story, part of the mountain, or leave and never return." Nathan's mind reeled. The choice seemed impossible. To stay meant to become part of the echo, to be lost forever in the mountains. But to leave, to turn his back on the darkness, meant never to understand the secrets that lay hidden beneath the earth, never to witness the power that flowed through the mountain's veins. The woman smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "Choose wisely, Nathan, because once you choose, you will never return. There will be no going back." Nathan's heart thudded in his chest, and for the first time since he had arrived, he understood the true weight of his journey. The mountain, the echo, the woman, it had all been waiting for him. He had been walking toward this moment all his life. With one last glance at the path, at the world beyond the mountains, he made his decision. "I choose," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the howl of the wind. The darkness closed in once more, and the mountains swallowed him whole. But this time, it wasn't the echo that called his name. It was something far older, far more powerful. And Nathan answered, becoming part of the legend, part of the darkness.